Hello, this is Lydia. Dear Rabbi Jack, thank you for your amazing, wonderful speech. And sorry, I don't know, because of some technical reasons, I was trying to join the Skype meeting after, but I could not join, don't know why. So I decided to record the question. During your speech today about science, God, you also mentioned the Job, and the figure of Job is one of the most interesting figures in the Bible for me. And the conclusion of the lecture was that your great teacher, Hans Jonas, said that we should live our life in a way God will not regret He created us. So why was this story of Job made in this way? If God is justice, if monotheistic God is different from other gods in polytheistic religions, and He is not checking people, tricking, playing with them, why He decided to, make this game with Job? What was the biggest sense? Why Job? Why the righteous one and not somebody who was sinful? What was the big meaning, in your opinion, of this tricking thing that God made, this challenge that God gave to Job? I would like to hear your answer. Thank you so much.
Is in many respects the central question for anyone who believes that God exists, that God is a creator, that God creates the world, and in some specific manner is in control of the world, and that therefore you would think that the world would exhibit the very moral qualities that religious people attribute to God. So, for example, we would attribute to God that He is a creative, He is the foremost or principal creative reality of the world, right? That's a basic assumption, it seems to me, of monotheism. It's not an assumption of polytheism. It's not an assumption of dualism. Because what you have in dualism is you have really two gods, a God of good and a God of evil, and they're fighting it out. And in the Zoroastrian world of dualism, it's the good God that ultimately wins, but the evil God is a God that works and functions. Now, in a pagan world where you have a multiplicity of deities, it's conceivable, especially since the deities are larger exemplifications of what it means to be a human being. So you have male and female gods. These male gods are, like, for example, are very jealous, very concerned about their power, about their authority, attempt to control, and therefore they're envisioned as the kind of gods that could do great damage. And then you have also the sense that you have these female gods that also function with these excessive powers. Now, if you believe in either a multiplicity of God, a pluralism, or a view that you actually have a God of good and a God of evil, the problem of evil really doesn't really reach its apex or its most significant manifestation. Is that clear to everybody? Because you have a very easy answer. Why is there evil in the world? Well, you have this evil God who's doing it. Now you have a modification of that with the doctrine of Satan, that somehow Satan is the one who controls us at times, lures us, and brings us in a direction that is evil, right? Although I think one would argue that with the proper religious attributes and with the proper religious training and understanding, one can resist this satanic influence, okay? But let's leave Satan alone, because the question that Lydia raises is a question more related to the book of Job and really wants to have some clarification as to the meaning of the book of Job and how it relates to how a God that is a God of justice can treat what, from the point of view of the book of Job, especially if you look at the prologue, it specifically says this is the single most good, righteous, holy individual. There is no one like Job. So why should Job, who is actually righteous, does exactly what God wants, why in the world should he be the one to suffer the worst evil? That's the problem with the book of Job. Now, most people, in trying to deal with that problem, answer it by saying that when God comes forth out of the voice of the whirlwind, he overpowers Job and basically says to Job, you really have no basis to even ask that question because you haven't a clue what the world is all about. You don't know what is involved in the world, and you're just going to have to trust me. And in fact, the end of the book of Job, in the epilogue, it says basically that he says to the friends, you have not spoken of me correctly the way my servant Job has. And therefore, Job will offer up a sacrifice for your sins. So my take on the book of Job, and you'll see it if you look at Descendant, a new look at the book of Job that I wrote, okay? My take on the book of Job is, well, what are the sin of the friends? And in what way has Job spoken correctly about God and the friends have not spoken correctly about God? That's the question. And here, my feeling is that the friends are saying, because God is just, and the creator, therefore everything that happens in the world acts according to justice. You see? It acts according to justice. Therefore, if Job is suffering and God is just, it means that he must have done something, in fact, horrendous things, to suffer this much. Because if you're saying to us, this is what the friends are saying to Job, if you're saying to us that you're innocent and you don't deserve this suffering, you're really saying that God is not a just God. That's what you're saying. And so Magda has a problem with that. In other words, if God is really a just God, how is it that the righteous suffer and the best suffer the worst fate? Is that clear what the problem is? Okay. Now, my attempt to answer that question is as follows. Really, what God is saying to Job is two things. First of all, if you look at the sections dealing with the voice coming out of the whirlwind, what makes you think that you're the center of the universe? There's a vast universe out there of which you're a small part. And you're somehow saying, I'm the center of the universe. Well, maybe you're not. God is concerned with a whole variety of other things, where, in fact, whole realities that man isn't even included, doesn't even exist there. But that isn't even the main point that he makes. And I put it in my article as follows. God says to Job, when was the last time that you created the world? You're complaining that the friends are not putting themselves in your place. In fact, Job says to them, worthless physicians are you all. You're not putting yourself in my place. You're complaining about them because they don't know what you're going through. Do you have any idea what is involved in creating a world? Right? You haven't a clue what it means to create a world. You don't have any idea what are the problems, the difficulties, the dimensions. But more than that, he says, it's your task to bring justice into the world, not mine. It is human beings' task to bring justice into the world. And if they don't do it, it's not going to get done. And that's why in the latest part of the questions that God asked Job, it turns from the interrogative into the imperative. You do away with the evil in the world. You bring justice into this world. Now, in other writings that I've written, I don't know if you have them, Magda. This was years ago. I think in '59, I wrote an article called "What Can We Believe About God After Auschwitz?" But in that article, what I said is the following. If you take everything that makes for good, but everything that makes for evil, and do away with it, you are really doing away with everything that makes for good also. Because there is no way that you can do away with evil and all of the possibilities for evil without doing away with good and all the possibilities that make for good. So you have one of two choices. You can have a world where there's neither evil nor good, or you have a world where there's good and the possibilities of achieving good and choosing good, but you can't give a person the possibility of choosing good without at the same time giving that person the possibility of doing evil. Can't do it. And Royce put it very well. He says, this is the kind of universe where a moral person can act morally. Let's assume that you have a universe where I can choose between a better or a worse cause, where I'm not responsible for my acts. That means that everything I do is already predefined, predetermined, and done by somebody else. And therefore, I can only do good. Is that a moral universe? Is that a universe that even allows for morality? You see, it seems to me that we would then say that we would want a world that has neither good nor evil. Neither good nor evil. Now, here's the real problem. And this I've published, I'll send you. In this article that I wrote from Biology to the Spirit, what I basically say is that we are born incomplete. All human beings are born incomplete. And we have to make choices to complete ourselves. We are immersed in a society that is incomplete. And we have to make choices to determine how that society is going to be completed. Now, if you take that away from all human beings, there's no way that they can grow up even. Because we can't grow up without making choices about who we are, how we want to live, and the kind of a life we want to live. This is a matter of choice. Or let me put it another way. Let's assume that every time we have a choice where we want to do something that's really self-damaging or evil, God would intervene and make it work out fine. Which means that God intervenes in every situation where everyone, when deciding to choose the evil, would reverse it and choose the good. You tell me how you can be a responsible person if you have absolutely no control of it. Whatever, it makes no difference. There's no point trying because you can't fail. And then where do you draw the line? Okay, so God shouldn't intervene if I'm eating the wrong breakfast, if I'm smoking and I get sick. So why shouldn't he intervene there? That could destroy my life. No, he should only intervene when people go to war. Hello? Hold on a second. Are we not responsible? It's like saying to a kid, you don't have to be responsible at all. You don't have to grow up with any responsibility because I will make all the choices for you. So you have, it seems to me, one of two alternatives. Either a world that has neither good nor evil, which is impossible. No world can be that way and in any way include morality. Or a world where there is the possibility of doing good and doing evil, where the responsibility is there to achieve the good so that we can complete ourselves. Look, we may not be great painters, we may not be great writers, we may not be great sculptors, we may not be great artists, but every single one is an artist when it comes to completing our life. It's what we make of ourselves and how we want to live in the world. That is the issue. You see the point I'm making? Now, does that mean that I've answered the problem of evil? Not at all. I haven't. All I've said is that there's no way of escaping the fact that, let's take away, look, I can choose something wrong. So let's take causal relationships and do away with them. But if causal relationships are done away, then I can't choose good either. All right, let's do away with possibility, because there's the possibility of good and the possibility of evil. Let's do away with the possibility of evil. I'm doing away with the possibility of good too. Because I've always got I'm writing a sentence, okay? And I look at that sentence and I say, you know, this is a better word. So let me cross out this word and put in a better word. Now, wait a minute. That's a choice. So you have to have both possibilities for good. And when I actually choose a possibility for good, I am rejecting a possibility for evil. Is that clear? Otherwise, I'd have a block universe where nothing really happens. Nothing happens. Look, I think that if we had a choice of a world where we would make no choices, where everything is predetermined, where it's almost like, you know, one of these boxes where you open it up and the thing comes out, or the kind of a universe that we have today, I also think in large measure, it gets us off the hook. It really gets us off the hook. Why do we want to blame God for something that we're the ones that should be responsible? Are you going to tell me that God is responsible for war? Really? Or we say, well, God created us as such human beings. Not true. Not true. I mean, for example, even people say, well, why doesn't God cure cancer? Well, medical science has gone a long way in curing cancer. I remember, 70 years ago, 80 years ago, when I was a young person, cancer was, if you were diagnosed with cancer, it was a death sentence. That's not true anymore. Not true at all. There are cancers now that easily can be resolved and cured. There are treatments and so forth. Let me ask you this question. Let's assume in spending $1 trillion on armaments, we spent $1 trillion on feeding the hungry and clothing the naked, right? And instead of saying to these refugees, we're going to take you away from your mother while you're nursing and hide you somewhere so that nobody knows where you are. Instead of doing that, we spend some money so we have rehabilitation. Instead of having vast majority, millions of people on the verge of starvation, we make the decision that instead of giving the rich more money, we're going to try to do something about that. This tax cut that we had here made the 1% much, much richer. I mean, is God the one who's the legislator that is legislating more money for destruction and war? Is it God that says we have a Secretary of Defense but not a Secretary of Peace? Come on now. It's a way in which we then no longer take responsibility for who we are. What it does is it diminishes the dignity of human beings. My dear teacher, God bless him, one of the truly outstanding geniuses, Henry Slonimsky, put it very well. Let me read to you what he says, because I don't know anyone who's put it quite as clearly as he has. He says, the good must bear the burden of the bad, and the strong that of the weak. He says, and the real issue, of course, is there are a number of midrashim. Let me read to you. Rabbi Yonasan said, a potter does not test defective vessels because he cannot give them a single blow without breaking them. Similarly, God does not test the wicked, but only the righteous. Rabbi Yosef says, when a flax worker knows that his flax is of good quality, the more he pounds it, the more it improves, and the more it glistens. But if it is inferior quality, he cannot beat it at all without it splitting. Similarly, the Lord does not test the wicked, but the righteous. When a man possesses two cows, one strong and the other feeble, upon which does he put the yoke? Surely upon the strong. He says the sentiment gradually established itself that it is the mark of the grandeur of man, that is human beings, to be asked to bear more than his share of the burden. If you know that your task in life is to do more than your share of the burden, that you're going to have to take on the burden of others, that is part of the grandeur of what it means to be a human being. And by the same token, listen to this, that the supreme degradation of the low and the base is to be thought not worthy of being ennobled to their bearing the sins and sorrows of others. In other words, the worst that you can say about a person, he can't be counted on to do anything, because he never prepared himself to do anything. He never prepared himself to take on the burdens of others. And isn't it true that when we ask ourselves the question, what is our life all about, really? What is our life to be as happy as possible, have as many pleasures as possible, to satisfy ourselves as possible? Isn't the real value of life is to live heroically, to live according to the virtues, live according to the values that we claim we believe? And when we fall short, to have a system by which we can feel guilty, we can ask forgiveness, and repent. You know, the worst thing you can do to a person is make that person never feel guilty about anything. They'll never know what the hell life is about. Not being able to feel shame. You know, Jeremiah says they're incapable of shame. They have forgotten how to blush. Is that the kind of person that we want? They don't suffer evil because they don't understand. No, I think this is really the issue.